This is just a basic video on how I made a 1/6 scale King Leonidas as seen in the movie 300. I really like that movie. I think King Leonidas, very charismatic figure. But the action figures were cost prohibitive. They were somewhere in the neighborhood of $200 to $500 currently, last time I looked, and that's pretty expensive. They used to be cheaper, but now they're much more expensive. Um, so, but part of this project was making stuff, so it was kind of fun. So you could see as the King Leonidas, he's got a helmet, he's got his cape, he's got a throwing spear, he's got his sword and also shield, and also his leg armor. I guess they're called greaves, I guess. And then the arm armor is actually called something else. I forget what it's called. So let me dissect this a little bit just so you can see what's cooking with this guy. This head is actually something I got off the internet, and the helmet, and then the body I bought separately. The helmet I think was like $13. I think the head was like 18, and then the body itself. Now that was I think like 18. I searched around and I found cheap prices. There are more detailed bodies that don't have the same articulation. I'm big into articulation. I just like that. You know, they only had a single joint at the elbow. This one has double joints at the elbow and also at the knees. So it allows for different positioning, articulation again. That's just a big thing for me. It does not have an articulated neck at the base. I kind of don't like those as much just because I kind of like to try to get some realism. And also, since he has a cape, a lot of it's going to be covered up. As far as the spear goes, while we're here, you can see the spear. This is actually made from a couple of chopsticks. So the rest of everything else that that is on this guy, as far as accessories go, was all handmade pretty much. So you can see it's just like a regular chopstick you would get at like any store. And then what I did to connect two of them together, because I wanted to make sure I had the right height, because if you look in a lot of the pictures, standing up straight, this spear is actually a couple inches taller than the top of his head. Oh, sorry. Try to look at what I'm doing in video. So that's where I needed something longer than just one standard chopstick. So what I did, I cut off a section of this straw. Take any straw that fits close, and then I just put glue in between and I glued them together. And then once I did that, I took the end of the straw and then I used an X-Acto knife and made a cut down the center to make some space for what my daughter gave me as an idea, is the X-Acto blade right there. That's actually a hobby knife, X-Acto blade. So that was actually very convenient that I had that lying around. And then I just painted it up using some brown acrylic paint, and I put some black in there for detail. And then at Walmart, they had this fake leather stuff. So I used this for all of the other leather that's on him, including the strapping for the body armor. And so you can see some of that here. And basically I just took a pair of sharp scissors and I just cut strips along here. I don't know what is that. I didn't do anything by exact measurements. I just did approximate measurements. So that's like maybe 1/8 of an inch, something like that. And so I just made like a bunch of it, knowing that I was going to use a lot of it. And then so over here on the end of the spear, I just used mechanics wire, hobby wire, I guess you would call it. And I just wrapped it around a few times and I put some paint over it. The detail on the blade itself is actually burning. I used to heat the tip of this to melt plastic, so it has that kind of cool coloring on it, sort of like it's like been heated and hammered sort of thing. And then I wrapped some of the leather, the little strips around. I don't know if you can see the detail, but if you look closely, I wrapped it all around the joint where the straw was to hide the straw, and so that's sort of like the area that he would hold on to throw the spear. And then the little end here, this little thing on the end is just a glob of shoe goo. I love using shoe goo for a lot of my projects. It dries, I wouldn't say hard, but fairly hard. Unlike some other hobby glues that's sort of like an adhesive for all sorts of materials, it kind of dries flexible, and I don't like that. So this, the cape is actually my uncle's handkerchief. He passed away, so I was looking at some of his items in his house, and that happened to be a nice color, I thought, sort of like that royal color for the Spartans. And then, so you can see here and there, I have like some little metal type things and the body armor and also the shield. What I used to make that was basically your good old Chinese takeout container. So what I did was I sort of stretched out the corners. You could see how everything sort of squished and bunched up like here. I stretched it out by hand, and then I just took my finger, actually no, I took like a plastic spoon, like a big plastic spoon, and I just started going back and forth and smoothing it out. So this is the lambda sort of emblem there. That isn't this. This was actually flattened out. I'll talk about that in a second, but once I flattened this out to a big sheet, then I cut out the approximate size that I wanted. It's actually cardboard backing, and then found the approximate size just by looking at pictures and whatnot. And then what I did was I took a couple layers of just regular old cardboard, so it wasn't on a hard table, and then I would take the end of the chopstick, and then I would just make a line and draw. And then you see, if I take the edge like that, you see I made this line here. This would be the back side of whatever you're doing, okay? And then I would take a look, and you see you have this nice little crease right there. So that is how I made the lambda on the shield, and then also the lambda on his little emblem to hold his cape, and also the detail that is on the body armor. Okay, and also these little strips were handy dandy. This is how I made the Gladiator Sandal. I just used a piece of cardboard from the back of a notepad, and then I started with the toe. With this particular figure was cool because it's not only articulated mid-foot, but also it has a separate big toe. So I started there and put the fake leather strip, and then I just started going with the flow wherever it felt natural for the strip to flow. That's how I ended up tying it. And then all I did was put some glue on the bottom of his foot because no one would see it, and I put some glue on the strap, and then I adhered the strap to the back of his foot. Again, he's fully articulated. He actually has, it's hard to see, but there's kind of like two ankle joints. It's like a double ball joint, that sort of thing. So I thought that was kind of cool. And then back to the shield. So I made the lambda symbol, and then what I did is I made a cut along this part of the lambda symbol, and then I folded this part, well, pulled this part on top of this part over here, and that's how it has a convex shape to it. Okay, and then I glued it onto the cardboard backing, and then I just used a piece of the fake leather and made a little support for his arm. And then this little dude, and you can also see on his little sword, the handle there was just made from a piece of plastic model car tree. I keep these around just for using for whatever parts. And what I did on the back of the shield was just melted it into something that he could hold on to for support. And then on the sword itself, let me see if I can pull this out without knocking him down. Oh well. All right. Come on out. There we go. Sorry. Okay. So what I did is I just used a piece of plastic. I bought these snippers, angle pliers they call them, and they're hung on the pegboard at the store on a piece of plastic. And I was looking at the thickness of the plastic, and I was like, oh, this it's not too thin. It's thicker than, say, like a plastic credit card. I did have some like plastic Amazon cards that I was going to use, but this is a little thicker. So I looked on the internet, found some pictures that looked kind of cool, just to get an idea of the shape. And then so basically I cut out the piece of plastic from tip to the end. I made a little bit of extra space just to give me some room. Technically, it's supposed to be a little bit shorter. And then I used the plastic Model Tree. I melted it down, and then I cut it down the middle with an X-Acto knife. And then I slipped it over the blade. And then as it was cooling, I would squeeze it with my fingers so that it would form around the blade. And then once that was like that, I melted this end. I heated up one end like that with just a flame, and then I squished it down with my fingers when it was cool enough, and then I gave it a little bend, gave it a little shape. So that's the handle part of his sword. Now this right here, I don't know if you can see, but I have two pieces of chopstick on either side for the handle. And again, it's just a standard old chopstick. I chopped off the end. I just sort of measured how long I wanted the handle, and it had to be wide enough for his hand to grip. And then what I did, I stood it up on its end, and then I took the X-Acto knife and I just sort of pushed it in there, and then I just used a little pair of pliers and tapped it all the way through the piece to split it down the middle. And then I just glued it on for my handle, and I did the same thing with the base there. And then I just put some glue around it, painted it up, and then just to give the effect of the blade, I took my X-Acto knife and I scraped off the plastic here. So it was white plastic. I could paint it silver, but I'm gonna leave it like that. So that gives you sort of the image of a beveled blade, that sort of thing. Now to the armor over here, like say on the leg, the greaves they call them. What I did was I took some of this stuff here, and I have pictures at the end of this video that you can sort of see the assembly process. And basically I just used pieces of paper, and I'm kind of looking for them. I don't see them. They're in here somewhere, but I just took a piece of paper and I just sort of like drew approximately what it would look like to make a template. And then I traced it onto the aluminum, and then I just cut it out. And then I did the same thing with the shield, where I used the end of the chopstick, and on the back side I started to make lines and creases, so you can see like there's a line going across here and over there, that sort of thing, and a line going down here, and then line on the side, sort of thing. And also you could see it also over here. Kind of hard to see. I don't know if you can see it, but you can see over here and over there, there's some detail. And then after I did that with all the body armor, I used the Rust-Oleum hammered paint, and it's the gold hammered paint. It had a sheen to it, but at the same time, it sort of made it look like, it didn't have like a typical gold shine to it. It had more of a sort of like a battle armor, brass, bronze sort of look to it. And then what I did, I just took some black acrylic paint and I diluted it with some water, and then I just used a brush and I just started to detail around some of the creases, that sort of thing, and around the edge. And I also used, like, you know, these little sponge brushes. I had like part of a sponge brush lying around. Actually, I may have just used that. And then I just sort of did some dabbing around there to get some of the detail in there, that sort of thing. And then you can see a little bit better how I made the back of the shield there. So I think that's about it. And, you know, oh, that's his, you'll see in some of the pictures after the video that I made this piece by piece because the leather doesn't really bend so much. It doesn't conform so well. It doesn't stretch. So on the I did the back side first, and you can actually see how I did some cuts around his butt to make the sort of like the leather fit the contours around there. Also, you can see here, I just used some good old mechanics wire, and I made a buckle for the his belt there, his sword belt there. So I just made a square, looped it around, made a thing going down the middle, and then that way I can thread the leather through. Yeah, and here you can see the detail. I started the lacing, I went through these holes first. Sorry, out of focus. I went through these holes first at the bottom, and then you kind of keep an eye on, if you want the white or the, the leather side facing up. And then from there, I just twisted around, did the other 2 holes up here, and then I made a knot, tied it off, and I put a little Elmer's glue on there, just so it doesn't untie itself, and then cut off the excess. And you can see the bottom of his Gladiator sandal is just cardboard. And you can always put more detail, that sort of thing. But this was just a fun little project for me to fool around with. And I think, given I made this with like all homemade stuff, it came out reasonably well. Oh, the little wristband right there, that isn't necessarily anything that you need, but I took it from a pen, basically. So it was the little metal band right there. I thought it was kind of interesting. Adds a little more detail. I think the very last thing I need to do, though, is make his little necklace. I haven't made that. I have to get some, like, I think there's like something called friendship bracelet string I was going to use. Yeah, so that's about it. And hope this was useful. Have a good one. Bye-bye. I'm back. I forgot to mention about his sword holster. So this was just a piece of the leather that I just folded over and cut to the right size. I had to make this after making the sword, so I can get an idea of how big. And then I just hand stitched it with similar colored thread, and put a couple little accents of gold paint, so it looks like it has like little rivets, that sort of thing. Same thing with his, what I call battle briefs. Has a couple of rivets in there so that it doesn't fall apart during battle and cause an embarrassing situation. Okay, that's all. I'm too lazy and I'm not a professional video editor, so that's why there's some videos spliced together. Just a little thing about this particular body. The reason why I chose it was, as I mentioned before, the elbows and the knees are double jointed. So you can, get into, bending his arm a bit more. The ones with the single joint arm, you can only bend the arm about that far. And then with this guy, you can bend it all the way like that because of the double joint. So I kind of like that better. It's easier for him to hold stuff. Same thing with the knees, double jointed. Now, one of the things regarding his pelvic area, I just wanted to point out, is that his, what I call battle briefs, are a little bit tall. If you look at a lot of the pictures of King Leonidas from the movie anyway, the briefs only go up to like midway here. The reason why I had them go up this high is because this particular model of action figure actually has like a double pelvic section for articulation, and those sections are not textured like the rest of the body. Okay, so that's why I had to sort of cover up that area, otherwise it would look really goofy. Another reason why I chose this particular one, not only because of the double joints, but his legs, because a lot of the other action figures that you buy separately for just the body, like the ones that have like a really good detail on the upper body, actually the legs are not textured, and you can actually see that these have a little bit of definition, and I knew that I was going to need good textured legs. Not just like it basically looked like the pelvic sections. They had no detail at all, and they almost look like a different color. So you can see there's some musculature in the legs, and so I thought that this was pretty good. And I'll show you here. See the base of the neck. The base of the neck does not have a joint. Kind of hard to see, but it doesn't have a joint there. So I kind of like this model. And then above the neck there's like a ball joint, and then the head goes on there. Okay, so that's all about the figure, and came with multiple hands, that sort of thing, but I like these particular gripping hands. Those are pretty decent. Yeah, And also I found that the ankle joints are nice and tight on this particular model. It's made by a company called Cool Model, Coomodel, and I forget what the model numbers. I think they started with BD something. I think this was like a BD 29 or something like that. The ones that I have seen with like really good upper body detail. I think one was Gang Hood. The ankle joints were really weak. I was kind of disappointed with that, and especially because they have a bigger body on top. Some of them, it just makes them too top heavy, and they just like fall over. These are fairly stiff, which is nice. So that's a cool model, all one word. Okay, another video. Um, just I forgot to mention about this. His shoulder harness. I'm not really sure what purpose it serves. Because he has like his cape slash cloak type of thing. So I don't think it's for attaching any weapons to it, but I made this anyhow. So you actually see the straps in the movie, and also if you look at other action figures, I looked at some of the more expensive action figures and sort of followed suit as far as what accessories they had. So I made this anyway. So again, with the, I made a wider strip of the fake leather. And then if you sort of look on the back, I didn't want to take off his cape. I didn't want the snap to break. But you can see the detail. And for the most part, it was just like one long strip. And then what I did is like I started here on one end and I had it loop around. Then I had it come around and then go across his back and then come up over his shoulder. And I actually made this like loop right here. I glued this loop and then I threaded this through and then went around, and then when I got to here, then I just put a little glue and I glued this part right here, and then I just used another strip the same length and glued this right here. Yeah, and you can even tack it down because no one's gonna see the back anyhow. So this is actually tacked down a little bit accidentally actually when I was gluing this strip, and that's good for me because in that way the shoulder doesn't ride up. The shoulder doesn't ride up that too much anyway. So it's kind of like in a good position right here on both arms. Okay, and again you can see some of the articulation, that sort of deal. Okie doke. Hope this was helpful.